Alright, this is going to be different than my other videos. This is going to be the first response I've done. And this is going to be a response to 43alley and his video called Realizing Hell Does Not Exist. Now, this isn't going to actually talk about arguments for the existence of hell. This is more going to talk about Jewish belief concerning hell. And I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that because we can find it in all these sources that hell necessarily exists. I can make arguments for the existence of hell, but remember, that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is just to talk about what he says about Jewish belief about hell. And let's see what he has to say.
I recall one person saying, "So what do you think happens to you when you die?" The rabbi then went into this very poetic explanation of how the memory of a man lives on in those who loved him, and how we all carry pieces of that person in our minds, and how his good deeds encourage us to do good deeds, and that's how we can say we live on after we die. It was really neat to hear. But the Christian mob...
Now, he says that that's what the Jewish rabbi believes, but later on he says that if you can't find the specific belief in the Bible or in the Tanakh, then you shouldn't believe in it. Well, where can you find that specific belief in the Tanakh? So that's sort of just him being inconsistent with his argument. He's inconsistent when he's saying, well, if a guy says he believes that you'll live on through your children or live on through the people you impacted, well, that's fine if it doesn't come from the Bible. But when people say that they believe in the afterlife, when they believe in hell, then if it doesn't come from the Bible, then you shouldn't believe in it. Now, all right, let's continue though.
They wasn't having it. Wait, stop. What I mean is, what do you think about heaven? Well, we really don't have a concept of heaven. See, we think that also we just turn into memories and float around. No, we simply don't have the same concept of the afterlife that you Christians do.
Well, what about hell? Do you believe in hell like we do?
A girl asked. Absolutely not, he said. Absolutely not. Now, my ears perked up at that. The topic turned to something else, but I was still hung up on that. I later raised my hand. I'm interested in what you said about hell. Why do Christians and Jews differ? I mean, it seems to be such an important concept.
Now, he asked why they differ. He's saying that Jews don't believe in hell, but he's asking why do people differ? Why do different religions or even different groups within the same religion differ on important issues? Well, that's pretty much true of everything. I mean, if you ask a Catholic about the afterlife, they're not going to hold the same beliefs that a Protestant does. And even within Protestant sects, within each other, they don't have the same types of beliefs. So, now, I wouldn't say that... Now, Jews do have a belief in the afterlife, and I'm going to show that. But just because they don't have an identical belief that some Christians do... And by the way, the belief that he's talking about when he's talking about this is talking about a very specific group of Protestants, or Christians, when he's talking about this. He's not talking about what all Christians believe in. He's talking about a very specific group of Christians' belief. And he's saying... And if you use that kind of criteria, you're saying, well, Jews don't believe in that very specific doctrine of hell, then you could pretty much argue that a lot of Christians don't believe in hell either, if you're going to use that type of argument. But let's continue.
He said that there's no mention of hell as Christians know it in the Hebrew Bible.
We're going to go through that, by the way. We're going to talk about different verses from the Tanakh and what they say about the afterlife.
Simply not in there. It's really something we don't lose sleep over. That afternoon, I was in the library researching it. The internet sucked back then. But the rabbi was right. The Jews, who came first and were around hundreds and hundreds of years before the Christians defected and formed their own religion, they simply did not believe in hell.
Now, that's not even what the rabbi said. The rabbi said that we don't have the same belief about the afterlife, that we don't have the same kind of concept. But he's taking that, and he's going to saying that Jews don't believe in hell at all. Kind of interesting shift there.
Wasn't in their holiest of texts. Now, did they leave it out? Was it in a book that just didn't make it to the Old Testament? No. They just didn't have it, period. End of story. At best, there were...
Now, him saying that does show his utter lack of Judaism by saying it's not in the Tanakh, or as he says, the Old Testament. Therefore, Jews don't believe in it. Well, I don't know how many people know this, but Jews are not particularly sola scriptura, like Protestants are. I mean, there are some Jews who are like that, but if you look at the vast majority of Jews, they believe in a twin foundation of the rabbinical sources and the Tanakh. And these twin foundation is the foundation for Judaism. And in most cases, the foundation for the rabbinical sources mostly comes from the Talmud. There are a lot of other sources outside the Talmud for rabbinical sources, but the main source for Judaism comes from the Talmud, and we're going to talk about that and show how that shows very specific beliefs concerning hell. Some of it, if I told you it comes from Dante's Inferno, you probably wouldn't bat an eye, but yeah, so he seems to think that Jewish belief only comes from the Tanakh. He doesn't seem to know about the twin foundation of the rabbinical sources and the Tanakh. So I find that interesting, by the way, that he claims how he's so well researched, yet he doesn't seem to know this very basic fact about Judaism.
Only a few vague passages mentioned in a place called Sheol, which was sort of a vague afterlife for Jews, but not a place of fire and punishment, and as Jesus said, the gnashing of teeth. But then the New Testament comes, and hell is sort of there. It's amazing how little hell is talked about. There are no detailed descriptions of eternal misery, demons torturing people. Like I said, it's all vague.
Now, notice what he's doing there. He's taking a very, very specific belief about hell and applying it to all Christians. And if he's talking about and if you want to define hell, hell should be defined as a place where sinners are punished, where people who are sinners go when they die. But he's defining hell by saying that demons torture you, there's fire, there's, all this very specific stuff. And that's his definition he's using of hell. He's not using... He's creating this specific idea of what hell is and then trying to argue against it. I'm not even sure how many Christians actually believe in the very specific version of hell which he's come up with here. But let's continue.
So why is this specific concept so prevalent, such an important concept among Christians? I don't know how else to say it. If the details are not in the Bible, they had to come from somewhere else.
Again, he doesn't... Now, to be honest, he doesn't seem to know about certain types of criteria, for Judaism, like with the twin foundations, but he also doesn't seem to know about what early Jews talked about, why they believed in hell. And as I'm about to show with Josephus, he believes that that if you believe in a just God, then the belief of hell and heaven necessarily follows. And since the Bible clearly believes in a just God, like, for example, Deuteronomy 32:4, then it's clear that based on that, we would have to believe in the concept of hell. I'm going to talk more about that later, but...
Eventually it was obvious. It was stitched together from all sorts of other places. Pagan religions, Greek and Roman mythology, and even...
Alright, so that about ends what he's talking about there. So now we're going to talk about go through the sources on Jewish belief about hell. And first we're going to take a look at a quote from the book of Devarim, which is Deuteronomy. And in the beginning here, we see a mention of God doing vengeance. Here. And towards the end here, we see it says, I cause death and grant life. I strike, but I heal, and no one can rescue from my hand. Now, if you look at commentators from the Targums, from 1 Samuel 2:6, and even similar passages found in Ezekiel 37, as well as passages from the Talmud, they all agree that this passage is talking about the resurrection of the dead. So, when it says here, it's talking about God putting vengeance against people, and he's talking about that the Lord will judge his people, he's talking about a future judgment that will take place at the time of resurrection. Now, in Judaism, there are basically like two types of hell. There's the hell that comes immediately after this life, when you die, immediately when you die. And then there's the other type that comes with the resurrection of the dead. This is talking about the second type. And to my knowledge, pretty much all Jews, with the exception of the Sadducees, which no longer exist, believe in the second type of hell. Most Jews believe in the first type. But, yeah, if we continue, here's a verse from the book of Yeshayah, 66:24, which also, for example, the commentator Rashi, if you read his commentator on this verse, says that it's talking about hell, that it's talking about Gehenna. And it says, "And they shall go out and see the corpses of the people who rebelled against me, for their worm shall not die, and their flesh and their fire shall not be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence to all flesh." Here's a verse from the book of Devarim, which is Psalms, and it says, "As the smoke is driven away, you will drive them away, as wax melts before fire, the wicked shall perish before God." From the book of Job, "A land of darkness, like darkness itself, the shadow of death without orders, and where the light is as darkness." And that, by the way, seems to be specifically talking about Gehenna, rather than the resurrection. And this next verse from Daniel, speaks about the resurrection as well. It speaks about the second type, the resurrection. And it says, "And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth will awaken, these for eternal life, and those for disgrace and eternal abhorrence." And, by the way, all the passages that I'm using for the Tanakh all come from the Judaic Press, which is an Orthodox Jewish publishing company. So this all comes from an Orthodox Jewish translation of the Tanakh. And you can actually find it on the Chabad website. And if you go there, you can actually find this Bible, which is why I used it. By the way, I own the Stone edition, and that's the one I mainly use, but you can't really find that online. So, but yeah, so this Bible, Orthodox Jewish translation, you can find online on the Chabad website. Of course, the Tanakh is just scratching the surface. Let's start going through some later Jewish sources. We'll start with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it says, "And the gates of hell shall open on all the works of vanity, and the doors of the pit shall close on the conceivers of wickedness, and the everlasting bars shall be blotted on the spirits of the not." And now we're going to discuss Josephus, as I was saying earlier we would discuss. It says here that he is from the sect of Pharisees. Now, I'm just quoting that to show what his belief about hell is, because later on here he talks about the specific beliefs of the different Jewish groups. And here he talks about the Pharisees. And you can read this quote, but I'm going to focus on this other quote, this slightly shorter quote from the War of the Jews, which says that the Pharisees say that all souls are incorruptible, that the souls of good men are removed into other bodies, but the souls of bad men are subject to eternal punishment. And he says on the doctrine of the Essenes that they also believe in the immortal soul, and they believe in the rewards of the righteous people when they when they die. Now, the Sadducees, as I said, are the only Jewish sect that do not believe in any specific doctrine, or do not believe in the afterlife. They're the only sect that I'm aware of that do not believe in the afterlife, and they actually only believed in, by the way, the first 5 books of the Bible. But even other sects of Judaism that don't believe in like the other books, like the Samaritans, are a good example. They actually do believe in the resurrection of the dead, and they base it, by the way, on Deuteronomy 32. But the Sadducees don't believe in that. But here's Josephus, what he thinks about Jews who don't believe in hell. He says, they take away the belief of the immortal duration of the soul, and the punishments and rewards in Hades. Moreover, the Pharisees are friendly to one another for the exercise of concord and regard for the public, but the behavior of the Sadducees, one towards another, in some degree, wild, and their conversations with those that are of their own party is as barbarous as if they were strangers to them. So Josephus is saying that if you don't believe in hell, if you don't believe in the afterlife, then you're a barbarous person. You have no sense of morality, and this kind of sounds like the kind of thing that like you expect to hear maybe a Christian say about hell. But no, this is Josephus, one of the most popular first century Jews, talking about hell. Now, here are some quotes from the Talmud on hell. Remember I mentioned that twin foundation? Well, this comes from the Talmud, as I said, the best Jewish source outside of the Tanakh on Jewish belief. And he talks about how he's doing things, and he's comparing that to people who are not going to. And he's saying how, at the end here, he says, I run towards the life of the world to come, and they run to the pit of destruction. And here's another quote. He says, moreover, I have 2 paths before me, one of the Garden of Eden, and one of Gehenna, and I do not know where they are leading me. Will I not cry? And this is a specific belief from the Talmud that says that there are 2 places you can go when you die, either the Garden of Eden or Gehenna. And we're going to look at some specific punishments of people in Gehenna. Here, for example, it says that every day his ashes are gathered, and they judge him, they burn him, and they scatter him over the 7 seas. So here the Talmud is saying that someone is burning in hell. But the guy in the video just said that Jews don't believe in any of this kind of stuff, and these are very graphic descriptions. These next 2, by the way, if you have any people who are like younger and don't want them to see maybe some inappropriate stuff, like this next one is pretty disgusting. It says, for Balaam's punishment, it says, he is cooked in boiling semen, as he caused Israel to engage in illustrious behavior with the daughters of Moab. And this next one describes people being punished with boiling excrement because they mock the words of the sages. And now we're going to look at the Jewish Encyclopedia. The Jewish Encyclopedia at the end here says, the pious go to paradise and sinners to hell. The Jewish Encyclopedia actually uses the word hell to describe where people will go, to describe Jewish belief in the afterlife. And this comes from the Jewish article known as Gehenna, which is the Jewish word for hell. And to end this, I'm going to end with a website, a Jewish website, where they ask a question. And so this question is, I've always read that Jews don't believe in hell. Sound familiar? In the concept of hell. Is that true? And he starts off with saying, first, let me distinguish between what Jews believe versus Judaism, what Judaism believes. Often, one has nothing to do with the other, and this is a perfect example. Jews may not believe in the afterlife, heaven and hell, but Judaism unequivocally does. And he goes on, and I'm going to link this in the description box, but yeah, so here's a modern Jewish rabbi. This is from a modern source. And you can see this was written by rabbis. This was written by a rabbi who says that Judaism unequivocally believes in hell. But the guy in this video says that Jews don't believe in hell. So I don't really see how he can claim that Jews don't believe in hell when every source I go to, the Jewish Encyclopedia, the Talmud, Josephus, the Dead Sea Scrolls, or even the Tanakh, disagree with him. So unless he's a higher authority on what Jews believe, on what Judaism believes, than all of those sources, then I don't really see his argument as persuasive. So that's all for this video. Thank you, and